Why do we have
to
wage
stop
laws?
exploitation of employees or laborers.
You will agree with me that, there is no exploitation by the employer, no?
Yeah, yeah,
If
yes.
there was no minimum wages, do you think some of the employers will be will ensure that they will get at least salary with which they can afford a proper living? They will try to cut the cost, So government has ensured a minimum wage, right? And then so that there is no discrimination of this poor and the marginal, and also to ensure that the workmen have to secure an adequate living wages. So therefore you can pay anything higher, but what has the government said? You can't give what? Bag of rice as salary. You have to give what? In currency. No, I can't say you work for a month and I will give you a bag of rice. That could be an extra perk. I don't mind. Okay. So typically the purpose of wage laws is to ensure that, the employer does not take people, does not exploit the people, does not discriminate the people. Now, what are some of the laws? I've already put here. So what are some of the laws? Very important law, Payment of Wages Act, right? By the Payment of Wages Act, what does it say? Everybody is a P&A guide. Tell me quickly one sentence about the Payment of Wages Act. What is the purpose of Payment of Wages Act? Ensuring timely payment of wages. Ensuring timely payment of wages in currency. Okay?
Correct.
Otherwise, you'll be penalized. You can't tell him that I will give you something else. No barter system. Payment of minimum wages. Ensuring that you cannot pay below this level. In India, it is a little complex. Anybody? Payment of wages is, what is the basis of the criteria? There are 3 criteria. Every state has a payment of minimum wages, right? Then industry. Then based on the skill, whether it's semi-skilled,
skilled, semi-skilled, and underskilled.
So yeah, so state, industry, and skill level. Then you also have this Construction Workers Act, where how much to pay for a male, how much to pay for a female if they're doing different kinds of jobs. So if you look at it, you can actually look at the list of acts. You can actually categorize into what I call it as. Can we categorize these acts under some categories, like one pertaining to wages, then the other pertaining to protection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, the other one related to income tax. So when we talk about wages, we can talk about payment of wages, minimum wages, then Equal Remuneration Act. What does Equal Remuneration Act say? All of you are P&A guys. That's why I thought
equal pay
I will have
equal pay to equal similar work. Equal pay to similar work.
So what does it mean? An example. That means if two
persons are working the same job,
they should be paid the same salary, equally. Right? Yes. No discrimination between what? Gender, race, color, age, no discrimination. Let me tell you, there is a classic case. All of you go home and read this case of BD workers case. So when it came to Equal Remuneration Act, so all of you are familiar with Jaunpur mein to aur bhi hota hai. BD, local cigarette. In villages you smoke this BD, which is made of dried tobacco. Okay. So all that you need to do is how does one make a BD? You just have to roll it. Okay. The dried tobacco is rolled. So a male also does the same thing, a female also does the same thing. But what used to happen, the male was paid 100 rupees per hour, while the female was paid 60 rupees per hour. Now, the effort required, the job was the same. So do you think there was discrimination here? Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're paying the male more and you're paying the female less. So guys, so the union took up this issue, and let me tell you, this was a classic case where they also gave areas for the previous 5 years. Okay. So in fact, software developers in US, male and female doing the same job. So I think now we are coming closer. So because of the Equal Remuneration Act, now irrespective of whether it is gender, race, irrespective of anything, if you're doing the same job, so you have to be paid the same salary. There is something called Pay Equity Act in US, very, very important. Okay. Now, having said that, in construction, UAL is in construction. Now, say for example, will you say the male and the female should be given the same salary as per the Equal Remuneration Act? If I just give you that data, no. If the male is actually doing a job which is of more effort, obviously he'll be given a higher salary. If the female worker is just helping, etc., of a less effort, she'll be given a less salary. Okay. Now, under the Protection Act, what are the various acts which come up? Provident Fund, Gratuity, Employee State Insurance Act, and also the other acts like, Pay for Time Not Work, the Maternity Benefit Act, right? So all these acts come into play and they have to be complied, right? And then in the end, yes, Workers' Compensation Act. What does that say? Anybody? I'm sure, especially people who are working in units, locations, I'm sure every second day somebody gets an injury, something happens. What does Workers' Compensation Act say?
Equal to ESI. But
Pardon?
where it is ESI is not applicable, then Workers' Compensation Act is applicable.
Absolutely. You have to give compensation for a person who actually gets a injury or an accident or whatever, you have to compensate him. All right. Yeah. Then lastly, we are talking about income tax. This is where what it's very, very important that you have to comply with everything and you have to structure your salary based on what is the kind of exemption the government is giving through income tax. Okay. Now, before we do some calculations here, there is one more. All this is okay. Now, government organization also can get some money from the government. How? Can you tell me how? All of you who are working in manufacturing organizations, even in others, so you have something called the Apprentice Pact. Are you aware of it?
Yeah.
By taking people as trainees or interns and using the title, what is required in the Apprenticeship Act, you can actually get subsidy of the kind of salary you are paying out for almost 1 year, the government will pay back. And all states are allowing Apprenticeship Act. And in fact, as an HR head for my previous organizations, to cut down the wage cost, I've always used the apprentice interns and had got huge amount of subsidy as a part of training. Okay, this is something you can actually use in your organization to cut down wage costs, especially at entry levels. Okay, guys. Having said that, now we'll come to this income tax and structuring in a little while from now. Okay. Okay, let me just clear that.
Recently there was one 2 years back, they had made basic pay like 15,000. It has to be mandatory across for everyone. So does it fall under the Wage Act?
In fact, now if you see the wage code, which has not been implemented, there are some kind of discussions, right? Yes. Where you are saying that, because as per the income tax, you can have your basic 35% to 40% or 45% of the base salary. But today, as per the wage code, you are saying 50%.
50%.
So there are, because when you say 50%, then PF deduction will be more, then your net salary will come down. So there are certain kind of challenges which government is debating on, which has still not been implemented. Okay, so I will just come to this tax structuring in a little while, when I'm doing the components, because I don't want to duplicate it since we are also having paucity of time. So is it okay if I can park this when I'm doing it? I will do it.
Sure,
all right. Okay. Similarly, you have government regulations even in US. Like you have this Equal Pay Act, you have this Fair Labor Standards Act, you have this Federal Employee Compensation, and you also have this FLSA, FICA. And you also have Tax Reforms Act. Now, every country has some amount of government regulations. Now, if you ask me from where have they actually been originated, I'm sure all of you know that India is also a member of the ILO. They actually, ILO prescribes, or ILO tries to create that, that what are those government regulations you should have to ensure and to ensure that the workman is not discriminated and exploited. Okay, guys? Yeah. So I don't want to get into detail of law because essentially then we'll be missing out on compensation. But please feel free if you have any kind of doubts, clarifications, reach out to me or send me a WhatsApp. All of it is welcome. All right. Now let us look at collective bargaining. Most of you have some kind of an experience. Okay. Now I would like to know from one of you, very quick in a way, as to how critical is this collective bargaining in terms of determining the wage for the workmen. Anybody who had an experience? Somebody said now our wage agreement is getting to an end and we have to get prepared for the next wage agreement. Yeah. Anybody who wants to talk about it?
Madam, my company's agreement is going in on 31st March.
Yeah.
And we are on the process of negotiation.
Okay. I want to ask you a question, Mr. Upadhyay.
Yes, ma'am.
You have unionized people, right?
Yeah.
You have unionized workers, means workers who are a part of the recognized union, right? Trade union. So why do people join union? Because, collectively you can negotiate wage agreement better, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the employer or the management, what does it do? To reduce the wage cost, you will also have some contractual employees.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Where the salary paid will be lesser because you can't pay less salary to the unionized worker because he comes under the agreement, and whatever the union has agreed, you have to pay. And obviously, they will always pitch for a higher salary. Now,
yes,
typically what happens? The non-unionized worker, what does he do? He feels that I join at a less salary, but these people, they in 3 to 4 years, they get higher salary, they get career growth. But I, as a contractual employee who is non-unionized, I'm still getting much lesser salary than a unionized people. Okay. Now, what happens? There's a lot of pressure from this non-unionized contractual employee to become a unionized worker. Why? Because for his own betterment.
Amen.
For his own betterment. You know the famous Maruti case where because of this, the IR manager was also hacked to death. So what is the takeaway? The takeaway is be ethical. Do not have a huge pay differential or a wage differential. When I use that word differential means difference. Okay. Differential means do not have a huge gap between non-unionized wage and unionized wage. Why? Because it will demotivate, and people in the long run will see that, hey, we are being taken what? Exploited. Exploited is the word, right? So as a management also, we should appreciate and we should encourage that we should have, the non-union. So in today, most of the industries are recognizing this. So our takeaway from the collective bargaining, the effect of, trade unionism on wage determination is ensure that you don't have huge wage differential between non-unionized and unionized. Okay. Yep. Now, when we talk about demand and supply of labor, how does the demand and supply of labor impact our wage or our compensation? Anybody? Quick. This is afternoon session. So if I only talk, it will be like a nice storytelling and all of you will just go off to sleep unless and until I ensure that there is participation. And this is something interesting. So when I said demand and supply of labor, how does it impact compensation?
So if supply is less, the demand will be more.
Say for
So,
example,
okay.
I'm in the state of Andhra Pradesh. Okay. Now Hyderabad is having a lot of demand for, say, cloud computing people, right?
Mhm.
Now what will happen? And they are giving nice good salaries because a lot of multinationals are coming up, setting up their delivery centers, etc., etc. Now tell me what will happen.
Supply will be.
The demand would be much more
There
higher.
is a
to
huge
the
demand,
those
but what will happen?
MNCs.
People from neighboring states or neighboring places
They'll
will
migrate there.
leave
Everybody
the
will move.
jobs and they'll say, hey, we are getting more salary.
Okay.
So they
Let's
are
go
going
there.
off.
Yeah.
Now, more and more people, but when you have more and more people, then what will happen? First of all, salary will go up to a level, but then it will become an equilibrium. That means balancing. Because then again, there will be many people, pool will become bigger. So initially, yes, they will, because of the initial demand, you will put a high compensation. But after that, there will be a plateau. So what typically they say is initial shift in demand definitely will create that shortage of labor. But afterwards, there will be a balancing. Because what happens, there will be mobility of people from one place to another when there is a demand for certain jobs. Why? Because they are going to get more salary. Supposing I will say, hey, HR people are going to get higher salary in Bombay as in compared to Hyderabad. So depending on your personal thing, they say, hey, why should 3 times more salary? Let me go to that Bombay, right? So that's how it works, demand and supply of labor. And also what happens when I'm talking about demand and supply, even the skills, like for example, sometimes what happens, there are a lot of multinationals or startups coming up with, say, I don't know how many of you are in healthcare something. There is something called medical coding. They are putting up. Then suddenly what happens, medical coding, it's becoming a very, very critical skill. So people who are working in other medical coding businesses, they will all resign. They will say, hey, we are going to get a higher salary. And so therefore, there will be a shift from them to the place where the requirement is there. So obviously you'll have to pay 2 times the 3 times the salary, but you can't continue to pay that kind of an increment because businesses will not survive. You getting me? After some time, there will be a plateau. So definitely demand and supply of labor will have to certain extent in the initial stage, some kind of an impact on your compensation. Yes.
Madam, I have an experience in this respect. That is whenever I worked in Skipper Limited.
This is I'm Anirban?
No, I am Jaydeep Vishwas.
Okay, hard. Yeah, now I can see.
Whenever I worked at Skipper Limited, there was one section was opened, that is a screw section, and at that time we required CNC machine operator, and but our salary was lesser than the demand of CNC operator skill level payment. So we have decided to change our compensation structure, and a separate pay structure was created, and for the providing of wage level to the CNC operators, and that we have made our demand by recruiting CNC operators from MSME, and one of the institution located at Kolkata, and that is why I have an experience that is a skill level has an impact on the demand, on the payment side of an employer.
Absolutely wonderful. I will also give you another example. Today, you want crane operators. There's a demand, but there's a very less supply, right?
Yeah.
Crane operators. If you can find an engineer, but you can't find a crane operator. Your engineer salary will be just 10,000 or 15,000, but the crane operator salary will be about 50,000. You agree?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me tell you, I was doing some work for a construction company. So what they did, you know, government also supports skill-based trainings, right? And they give you a lot of subsidy. They set up skill-based nodal centers where they picked up all these kind of skill sets, like you said, CMC operator, crane operator, rig. Like in oil and gas, you need a rig because you also that's also a very scarce skill. So they started training them. In fact, what had happened was there was a good amount of talent supply for their own company, construction company, and they were able to also give away as a part of, you know, giving away to other industries wherever there was a requirement. So they were making money both from the government and also, you know, giving away people to other industries. Right? So yes, as absolutely right. Whenever there is this demand and supply of labor, depending on the skill sets, so you need to look at. Let me give you another example. Now, when there is a huge demand constantly, what do you do? And if, like for example, if 50 to 60% of your workforce at an entry level, okay, constantly you need people, then what do you do? Like for example, nurses, doctors, or customer service representatives, or cost. Then what about their profits? So what they will do, they will have a constant talent supply of nurses. So the first years will do certain work, the second years will do certain work, the third years, so they don't have to worry about. Similarly, can you think of hospitals who will also have, you know, medical colleges, because they also need doctors, right? Now, can you think of hospitality sector where they have set up like the Oberoi Training College, where they have set up what training centers, training and giving, in fact, degrees and certifications so that they can have a constant talent supply. Let me also tell you guys, the East, you know, like Manipur, etc., they're supposed to be very good people for customer orientation, customer service orientation. So what has happened? Retail sector, they've actually brought 12th class pass people saying, they know, study while you work. So they tie them up in a 3-year degree college. So few hours they would be studying. So they have tied up with some college, and few hours they'll be studying, few hours they'll be working. So in that way, they have, you know, they have secured for 3 years, there won't be attrition, there won't be any churn in their attrition rates. So you, as a compensation person, you can't just think of, okay, if I have a vacancy, I will go to placement guide and recruit from there. You have to think of creative and innovative ways depending on the kind of challenges faced, especially in relation to the demand and supply of labor. Okay. Now, when we talk about economic changes, somebody said no cola. So what happens if I'm working in Hyderabad? Now I'm shifting this person to Bombay. Then can I give him the same salary? The inflation, the cost of living index is very high, right? So I have to factor that in, because to ensure that there is a standard of living for him, just as the way he is living in Hyderabad. So you have to add the COLA, the impact of inflation there. Or when you're giving a salary hike, it is just not the hike, you also have to consider the inflation as well. Otherwise, at the end of the day, what the employee gets, you have to ensure that, you know, he continues to get, if he is able to, the value of his currency gets reduced and reduced, to ensure that he gets a certain kind of essential services which are which help him to have an affordable living, you have to actually give him that percentage of increase which takes care of the inflation. Okay.
Plus,
Now-
ma'am, even the benchmarking data will also get changed, right? In order to, if a person is getting to relocate from one state to another.
Absolutely. I'll give you an example. I'm sure all of you heard of company like Shell.
Yes.
Shell. Is it a multinational company?
Yes.
Yes.
It is.
Right?
Yes, it is.
It is globally they are present in different locations, right? So when a company is globally present in all geographies, etc., is there mobility of people?
Yes.
Yeah.
There
So
will be.
if a person, I shift him from a low, what is it, cost of living index to a high cost of living index, what do I need to do? Obviously, I have to factor that difference, no? So what does Shell do? Base salaries are different. They remain the same. Okay. So whenever they're shifting people, globalized, that's what global compensation. When they're shifting people, then all those, cost of living index and the other perks which are entitled for geographical, they depend on the geographical locations, etc. They keep changing whenever a person shifts from one place to another. Because what they do is they actually calculate a basket, a 2 living bedroom, studying, then some entertainment, etc. For for a family to live, what is all that is required. So when people are shifted from one place to another, ensuring that they still maintain the same standard, you are factoring in this. Okay, are you I mean, you are able to understand how this mobility with the mobility, how the cost of living index is taken care of? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now we are talking about some other change which is impacting. What is that called? A blended work style. What does it mean? Blended work style. I'm sure all of you, some of you are in the millennial and some of you maybe. So, if you ask your parents, if you ask my parents, they never shifted jobs. They studied, then they worked in one at best two or only one company. Then they retired by 58, 60. And then the rest of the time they enjoyed with their grandchildren, etc. But now, do you see that happening? People start working, go to an ITS, KPO, etc. People start working from 12th class, right? After that, for 2 years they work and then they go for higher studies. Then they go on a sabbatical sometime. So what is happening? There is a blended style. Some people want to study also and work as well. So it is not that, traditionally, which was actually a thing which people would just look at one job, retire. It is not so now with the millennial. So they keep taking leaves or sabbaticals for higher studies or for vacation, etc. So what is that for the compensation guy? I have to align. If I have to motivate my people, if I have to attract my people, how am I aligning my entire compensation package? Somebody said no, components, etc. What kind of benefits do I give? What kind of perks do I give? Do I give educational what is it benefits for my workforce so that they can study, or have I tied up with a lot of education institutions, or am I giving a sabbatical like Google, go study and come back and your job is still there? So these are some of the blended work styles which organizations are looking at depending on the context of your organization. But let me tell you guys, all of this is what to ensure you are motivating, attracting the right kind of talent. And also, how are you going to align your benefits, your perks, depending on what attracts your workforce. So we'll go a little in depth when we come to components, so that how does branding take place? Now, what is this portfolio workers? Anybody? Okay. How does Amazon work? Does it have all? See, Amazon's statement, anything, anytime, anywhere. So who comes and delivers even at 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock? What are they called? Yeah, I don't want you all
Delivery
to
agent, delivery boys.
delivery boys, delivery partners. Are they full-time employees?
No.
No. So how do they work? They work on commissions, right?
Yep.
So what is it? These are called portfolio workers on contract. For example, I'm a subject matter expert, say in PF, gratuity, etc. I say I don't want to take up a full-time job 24/7. What can I do? I can actually be a consultant or on contract and work for 3-4 organizations, because that's my subject matter expertise. Create what? Because you have to send returns to the government, right? So I'm very well versed in that. So rather than organization taking a poor or an average guy at some salary full time, who does not know the work and who will have so many errors, I rather take an expert and just call him twice in a week and get my job done. Possible, not possible?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
You are getting, because if you are going to pay peanuts, you'll only get monkeys. And the work is also be so poor. So I rather take people, I don't need a 24/7 person, so I can take. So these are called portfolio workers. In fact, in the coming times, what one foresees is that these portfolio workers are going to be on the increase. That means organizations are going to have more of this kind of contractual employees as in compared to full-time employees. They'll only have just their core competencies, core critical processes having full-time employees. The rest of it will be outsourced, will be more on contractual basis. That's where you are looking at alternative pools of employment. And one of that is people, organization using is older workforce. People who have retired, you can also use them, which is called career deceleration. So when I say career deceleration, what does it mean? It means that even after retirement, people can still work for 4 to 5 hours depending on their health. Organizations, what are they doing? They come cheap. They are also very good workers. Why? Because they have a great breadth and width and depth of that subject matter. So they, wherever they require such people, like Reliance, they want a domain expertise in oil and gas, etc. They take retired people from where? All these government oil and gas companies. In fact, I, as a head HR for Tata Business Support Services, we took a lot of retired bank officers, because they came with very good process orientation competency, managing people competency. So therefore, we took them and we gave them lesser salaries as in compared to the market salaries, because they were also getting what? Pension. So they were very happy. So
But
one
ma'am,
could also, pardon, yeah.
yeah, but such kind of arrangements typically, doesn't last long. Unfortunately, organizations may have a lot of objectives behind certain assignments. They may have some thinking in terms of, saving a cost, getting some expert people in lesser cost. But eventually, sooner or the later, most of the organizations do realize that, this kind of arrangements is not going to work. And that is the reason they again switch back and then goes back in terms of hiring a permanent employee.
No, you have to look at what kind of jobs. I'm not able to understand who's speaking, but
Yeah,
you
this is
have
Vinay.
you have to look at what kind of jobs. See, this is not for all kinds of jobs. Let
Correct.
me give you, not all
Agree,
kinds of
agree.
jobs. Was that Naveen who was expressing?
This is Viren.
Yeah. So what I mentioned is you have to look at the job as well. You also have to look at the context as well. I'll give you a very interesting example. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this Hyderabad. How many know the Satyam computers? Do you know Satyam computers?
Yeah, I have actually worked on a merger and acquisition assignment between Tech Mahindra and Mahindra.
Okay. Wow, great. Now, Satyam was at its peak. When it was at its peak, they actually came up with a public-private partnership called what? They came up with, I'm sure then you must have heard of, there's something called 108. You call this number toll-free 108, then there will be an ambulance. Okay. So what is it called? EMRI, Emergency Medical Research Institute. They had call centers. So why did they set this up? saying that, anybody could give a call to this call center and immediately there would be an ambulance which is nearby that place, which will go rush and what is it? Take that person, if it is sick or accident, reach him to the nearest medical help. Okay, it's called 108. On the similar lines, they also came up with something called Hmri, Health Management Resource System. What was this? This was again another call center called 104, where they were doing telemedicine, so that they were able to reach even the remotest corner of the villages. Anybody could call up and discuss their medical health issue, and they were given medical treatment over the telephone. Now, in this call center, they were all doctors, young doctors. Okay. Now, what has happened? Young doctors' aspirations are either to get a government job or to go abroad. So, this call center was like a parking space. So, there was huge attrition. And there were new doctors, so their productivity time also 15 minutes per one, to close one call, to arrive at some diagnosis, etc. Huge attrition. Now, when there is huge attrition, what happens? Productivity does not happen. You're only all the time hiring, rehiring, etc. So, like in the funnel, there is leakage, you are filling leakage. Now, I was closely associated with this initiative. So, what did we do? We said, hey, this can't, because the job, it's like there's no match between the job and the person we are hiring, because the job does not give those career drivers which the person is being hired for. Okay, the mismatch totally. So we looked at retired government doctors who are healthy. We took a lot of retired government doctors who were specialized in their respective areas. Now, asking him to come in the morning and go in the evening, would it work? It wouldn't have worked. So we redesigned the job. We made it into 2 shifts. So this retired doctor has to come only for 4 hours. We gave him a pick and drop facility. Then we were getting them at almost 1/3 the salary, because they also had pension, children married, everything very happy. Okay. Now, we also told them club facility. So they were enjoying this because all of them were all working together. So there was a huge camaraderie. But look at the productivity. These guys took 15 minutes, but they would take only 5 to 6 minutes because they had deep pockets of expertise. Okay. No attrition because they were all locals and they didn't want to shift, and they were all married, happy children, all married. So what does this say? Saying that when you are using this kind of a initiative, you have to check, you have to see how you will redesign the job. If it not that it is plug and play, it will fit everybody. Okay. So what I meant is, as a competent person, we have to look at, okay, now are there certain things we can do to reduce the wage cost, and where, which pockets, etc. So it could be 1%, 2%, 3%. Okay, guys. Okay. All right.
Madam, one thing I want to ask.
Yeah.
Regarding the engagement of portfolio workers, as you said. One thing that is it possible to engage portfolio workers where their work is perennial in nature, that is a permanent in nature?
You're talking about when work is of perennial nature, which is continuous, right?
Yeah.
But now you need to look at, is there any career growth? So do you really want, so I'll need more data on this, because some organizations have taken people of this. Like, for example, the delivery partner, it's a perennial nature, no?
Yeah.
You tell me?
Yeah.
But they are not full-time employees.
How it is possible to engage these kind of guys instead of under the payroll of employees? We will engage where
you can do. I will need more data. Like, for example, if you want to know,
give some input to this question, ma'am. I have seen your companies, or we are also practicing to hire salesperson.
Okay.
As a in this payroll.
Right.
But we're not able to see the output in terms of accountability, in terms of the standard of work they are currently giving us.
Mhm.
So where we want to
I'll
work,
tell you what it is.
how we can increase the accountability of them.
No, no. So how you can increase? So what happens is such jobs you need to have what, like an insurance guy, sales guy.
Yeah.
So high, the component will be here. The pay mix will be high variable pay. What is going to motivate him? If I sell, what is it, Toyota, I'll get this much commission. If I sell a Porsche, I will get this much commission. So he knows the outcome. What is he going to get if he sells what? Or how many units is he going to sell? How much money he'll get? Okay, but that is not good enough. If the job does not have, we are coming to that. I will explain to you. If the job does not have performance elasticity, what I call it as, then how can you increase his variable salary? You getting me? So most of these portfolio workers, you have to ensure that, there is a good scope for them to actually get that commission in terms of, is there a scope actually to make money? If there is no scope to make money, like for example, I was working for an IT company in Baroda. They were telling me that we get okay good bonus during the seasonal time, but what about the non-seasonal time? So what happens now? If you are looking at a seasonal, non-seasonal, and then you don't want to have full-time employees, then you have to give commission during seasonal time and during non-seasonal, so that he comes back to you, because otherwise he'll go and work somewhere else. He will definitely work somewhere else, but give him some kind of an additional incentive when he comes back to you. So there are various designs you work around with. Okay, we will definitely work around these things when we actually come to variable pay plans. Okay, guys? Okay? All right. Quickly, I want to finish this and then only take a break so that we can then. Now, globalization, technology, well, it has a huge impact, needless to say that, because what has happened is there is what, people mobility, work mobility. Simple example, when jobs, software developers jobs, you pay almost like 50 to 60 lakhs, which is almost like 80 to $90,000 you have to pay. Now what happens, because of globalization and technology, you can actually move that job from a high cost to a low cost, which is called what, cost arbitrage, right? What is happening to the ITS center? All jobs are being moved to where, remote centers, where you can actually get skill set at a much lesser cost, from a high cost to a low cost, which is most of them are doing. In fact, even manufacturing organizations are trying to set up their production centers, etc., from a high cost labor to a low cost labor. No? Huh? So typically, if I want to say, it's very, very important, because technology has a huge impact. If you say the COVID has actually pushed it further. Now, when you automate a lot of these lower end jobs, what will happen? There is some amount which you get, so that you can pay the other critical jobs a higher salary. So today, most of the organizations have eliminated the lower jobs through automation. Now, like for example, the EPBS, you don't have a receptionist today. You go to talk to Citibank, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, press 3 for this, or if you this answer. So most of it is automated. Now, I was actually traveling to Switzerland. If you will see that here at the airport, you will have so many people to help you. There, only one person, you have to do everything yourself. You have to weigh your baggage. You have to put the tag there. Except for security check, you won't find people at all. Why? Because it's so expensive. Manpower is so expensive. Right? So you need to think of ways and means. How do I actually then automate, or how do you ensure that, using technology, I can eliminate few jobs, so that, I can reduce the wage cost, or at least, ensure that I get which gives you a little more budget to get better kind of a people and pay a little more for them. right? I'm sure most of you know outsourcing, offshoring. So in today's time, because of globalization, you are actually sending people from here rather than taking, and that's a big story, right? Infosys, Wipros, Tech Mahindra, what do? They send people from here, pay the same salaries, pay the dime allowance, that is per day allowance, which still comes much cheaper than hiring a person from there, right? Okay, guys. So before we go to the next module, any questions? These are all those external factors which we looked at, which impact compensation. Now, my question to you is, when you go back, you will get an assignment saying that everybody is working in a certain industry, right? Your organization, it could be construction, it could be IT, it could be pharma, it could be railways, etc. I want you to study what are the kind of external factors which are impacting your industry and which have an impact on compensation. Think about it, because obviously, because your organization is in that industry, that is also going to get impacted. Okay, so what are some of the key critical external factors right now which are impacting your industry? Okay, that's something for you to think. So with that, I think if you have no questions, what we will do is we'll break for us. We'll have a small break, and then we come back with absolutely a different module, which is more, I think you can relate with it. Okay.
Yes,
Any questions? If we can, if all of you are there. Okay,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
can see Anirban saying yes. Okay. I'm assuming that everybody is back from tea break. All right.
I'm also.
Rituparn, are you back?
Jaideep here.
Huh?
Jaideep.
Okay, great. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just talked about the key external factors. The next module we are going to cover in this session is what is compensation and what are the components of a compensation system. So tell me, what is compensation? When we say compensation, what does it mean? How do we define compensation? How do we define compensation? Anybody? How do we define compensation?
Anything that motivate to work, it's called compensation. Anything payment, motivate.
Good way. Okay. We get some payment. Okay. Which motivates it. But why do we get payment?
For our
service,
work,
for imparting a
our
service.
yes.
So typically, can I define compensation saying that, both in terms of payment, we get both in terms of monetary and non-monetary for the effort, for my competencies, for everything what I give to the organization in that particular role, I get back something. That's compensation. But if you actually typically use compensating,
Compensation is a negative connotation.
if you look at it in the definition, it's a negative connotation, saying that you are compensating. Say, for example, I'm sure all of you on the production floor, somebody gets an injury, somebody loses a finger. Hey, so the compensation you have to get because of the loss of that finger, loss of that injury, etc. So, do you want to know about compensation or do you want to know about remuneration? So typically, it's a remuneration. So typically we use this word compensation, but it is actually it connotes a negative sense. Okay. So we will actually learn about the remuneration. All right. So all this said, so compensation refers to non-monetary, monetary payment given to an individual in exchange for the services the employee provides in that particular job. So it will include what? Salary, wages, in addition to the commissions, incentives, perks, etc., which come with that position. Now, when we look at before we become compensation experts, have to understand what are the components of a compensation system. Okay. So typically, broadly, when I look at a compensation system, it is divided into direct pay and indirect pay. I'll go to the blackboard. I'm sure all of you are familiar with saying that, direct pay and indirect pay. What is direct and what is indirect?
Direct pay will be the salaries which is paid to the employees.
Okay. So when I say direct, we have to understand, because as we gradually move into sessions, we will be building pay structures, etc. So the term direct pay, the term non-direct, all this has to be very clear in our minds. When I say direct pay, it's all about cash. Cash in a reasonable time. Okay, it could be 2 years, 3 years, etc. Cash in a reasonable time. Because even in indirect pay, you get cash as pension, because PF, gratuity, etc. But you get after retirement. So when I say direct pay, cash in a reasonable time. Everything you do about cash. Now, further on, direct pay gets divided into base pay. Then variable pay. And then you have something called deferred pay. What is it? Direct pay is further divided into base pay, variable pay, deferred pay. Now, in the first introduction, I told you that organizations, they try to interplay, or they try to create a pay mix. How much percentage of base pay, how much percentage of variable pay, deferred pay, to motivate and attract people. So let us understand what is base pay. What is base pay? Anybody?
Wages.
Yes.
The
Base
fixed
pay is
components of
also
a
called
salary.
fixed pay. It can also be called wages. It can also be called, what else? It can also be called
Gross.
guaranteed pay. The moment Rituparna Mishra gets a appointment order, and I as an employee has contracted Rituparna as a senior manager or as an IR manager for a certain amount of money, guaranteed pay, month on month I have to pay him, irrespective of whether his performance meets my standards or whether his performance does not meet my standard. Got it? So that's a cost, payroll cost. So this is called fixed pay.
Madam, what about DA?
Pardon?
What about DA?
Yeah,
DA
in public sectors, you also have a DA. But DA, I'm coming to this. Now when I say fixed pay, wages, guaranteed pay, it is called base pay. Now supposing, for example, Rituparna Ghosh base pay is 50,000 rupees. I'm sorry, it's not, you might be getting 2-3 lakhs per month, but I'm just writing 50,000, okay, per month. Huh? So what I do, I give him lump sum base salary 50,000 rupees per month. What will happen then? What will happen? I will give him 50,000 rupees, like the people in Dubai get. But of course, now they also add HRA there. So, anybody quick here? All of you are such enthusiastics. If I give him this lump sum amount of 50,000 rupees, which is his base salary, tell me what happens. Who will catch him?
Reduced.
Huh?
Net pay will be reduced.
The tax man is going to, huh?
There will be no tax saving
tax
options.
on how much? On the entire 50,000.
50,000.
Right?
There will be no tax saving options.
So Bichara, he'll say, I'm getting such huge amount, but no point. It's only there in the name, because ultimately it gets taxed. So to ensure that, I make it what? Very, very effective, net pay is high. So I need to understand what are those exemptions the IT taxman is giving me. So therefore, what do I do? That base pay, I will put it here. I will further break it into, first base pay will become basic. What will I do? First, I will say basic, right? Basic and base pay are two different things. Got it? Basic can be 30-35% of your base salary. 30 to even 40% or 50%, depending on where you are, percent of your base salary.
May I say that is a base salary is equal to gross salary?
So,
Hello.
yeah.
Hello, madam. That is a base pay. Base salary is equal to gross salary.
The base salary may not be equal to gross salary because gross salary will have certain other things added to it. Okay, other allowances will be added to that gross salary. Okay, so in your salary statement you will get separately a base pay. That is, this is what is your fixed pay. Now out of that I have to say 30% or 40% of that salary will become your basic. Why I'm putting basic? Because all your tax exemptions are on the basic. All your tax exemptions are on basic. Like, what are the tax exemptions?
Leave encashments, gratuity.
Got
HRA. No?
Yeah.
HRA. Then, what else?
Leave encashments.
FTA, right? Of course, today instead of medical and conveyance, you have what? Standard deduction, right? Then you have what? What else? Children.
Education allowance.
Education.
Meal allowances.
Then
Meal
what else?
vouchers.
Hostel.
Meal vouchers.
Right? And you can also get something like, a car lease, or say, depending on the level you are. So what am I talking about? You are going to get tax exemptions if your salary is going to be broken up or structured into these elements. But these elements are only for convenience because you will get tax exemption. But instead of making these elements, if I just give away straight 50,000, then what will happen? Tax will be deducted on the entire amount. Now, after you calculate all this, then you get still there is some amount left out of base pay. Then what will you put as?
Special allowance.
Absolutely right. Does special allowance attract income tax?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was doing an assignment for somebody in Chennai. So this madam, the head was there in overseas. So she was so scared. She says, are we giving some other allowance over and above the base salary, which is called special allowance? Because, they thought that, special allowance means some special allowance we are giving. But they did not think that special allowance is actually a part of that employee's salary, which is broken up into different components. Okay. So when we talk about salary, if we want to make it very, very tax effective, so typically what I need to know, first of all, what are those elements which are tax exempted? Okay. Now you go anything else, I'm so sorry, you will get tax deducted. After that, then companies, what will they do? They will give something like perks, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Huh? Or best. And what else?
Performance bonus.
Yeah, but that also, if you
That
give
is taxable.
but under perks, you can give what all? The meal will be only 100 rupees per. Now, what will organization do if they still want to do something and improve? They can, you can
Bring
also
car
do
lease.
something like here in perks, car lease, right? But some amount of tax has to be paid. Okay.
Yes,
Car lease,
perquisites.
house lease, yeah, some amount it is there. Now you are also giving what?
Reimbursements.
What are reimbursements? You are giving some
Telephone
allowances
expenses.
for the benefit of the employer, so that he can do better work, right? Like for example, these days because of COVID, you are getting
Mobile.
lots
Internet.
of mobile, then you are getting internet, then you are getting office furnishing, because you have to create one office, no?
Mm.
There you are getting some amount for office furnishing. Then you can get periodicals to improve your, right? You can also get technical educations. You are being sent for all those certifications, etc. And you show the bills and you can get the reimbursement.
Can we also add this attire allowance in this reimbursements?
Attire allowance is a reimbursement because you are showing, the company is showing that, the person is coming to office, especially in
Yeah.
manufacturing organizations, okay? I'm allowance there, we're also getting travel and conveyance allowance. Just because why? Everybody is getting. Just put the ledger, put the receipt, give it out. So never do things like this, because what happens, the IT man will get suspicious. So rather than then he will say, okay, fine. So this company had to pay few crores of rupees because they were doing it for the last 5 years or 10 years, mind you. Why? A to Z, everybody was getting conveyance allowance as a reimbursement. Now you have to make a discrimination saying that way people who are present on the location, they can get, but people who are offshore, they cannot get, right? Now, for example, Airtel says every employee will get free 2,000 calls. Now, will they have to pay tax on it or no? Tell me. Quick question. Airtel, no, when you join, it says you can get free 2,000 calls. Huh? Quick, tell me, how will you account for that? That the employee gets a lot more to take in terms of benefits as opposed to base pay, where he has to pay what is it, tax. Now when it comes to variable pay, I'll just wrap this. Variable pay, what does variable pay mean?
Organization's performance and employees' performance, probably a
So as
combination
the
of
word
both.
suggests, that means, is it
It's
like
fixed
a
or fixed.
guaranteed salary, just like
No, it's
No,
it's not.
as the word suggests, variable pay means varies.
Varies.
Varies. So now variable pay, I want you all to, variable pay is in 4 forms. Okay. One is performance. Okay. So the most common thing you must have heard is pay for performance, variable pay, right? But there are also other forms of variable pay. 2, hardship. Have you heard of hardship?
No.
A call center guy works at night, he gets something like a night shift allowance. What is
Yeah.
it called? A hardship. A rig allowance, because it's a very difficult process. Or the cashier, it is called teller allowance, because he does for cashier job for 2 months or 3 months. Then somebody else does it.
Each allowance.
Hardship. Yeah. So we'll talk about it now. Then merit incentive. Okay. Sorry. Merit incentive. Then the other one is called hot skill. Okay. So there are 4 kinds of variable pays. Let us talk about the performance. When we talk about performance, essentially, what does it mean? That to increase the performance, it could be at what? Individual level.
Yes.
A classical example is the sales commission, or the individual incentive plan. It could be at a unit/location level, right? It could be a team incentive or a gain sharing. In manufacturing organizations, you have this word gain sharing for location. Essentially, what is gain sharing? I'll write it here. Gain sharing. Has anybody heard of gain sharing?
No, ma'am.
Nobody's heard gain
No.
sharing? Okay. So when we talk about gain sharing, essentially, it is different from profit sharing. Profit sharing is the reward or the bonus you get after the books are balanced and after the organization shows profits. Out of the profit, certain percentage is then shared across the organization. Okay, that's called profit sharing. So this year you might get some amount of money as profit sharing bonus, performance bonus or profit bonus. Then next year you might get some amount. Okay. What is gain sharing? Gain sharing is the reward you get month on month based on the productivity. Is there a change now? For example, a location has to make so much of X amount of productivity. After analyzing the trend, they will fix the target. You have to make so much of productivity. So what happens? In order that all the people, employees in the location work, collaborate, because everything is interdependent, to increase or to reach the productivity level over and above, you have this gain sharing plan so that all the people collaborate, help each other and ensure that they reach the productivity targets. Then that is shared equally with the team. Very clear? Now somebody, you may say, but ma'am, so sometimes what happens, they are different skill level people. So will all of them share equally? Then how do you think, what will happen? Just tell me, any idea? So then the plan will be 60-40, depending on whatever it is. So 60 could be a team reward, 40 could be an individual reward. Are you getting me? To ensure that there is a win-win. Because sometimes what happens, I can't win unless everybody wins. Does it happen like that? For example, there is a project. So you will get a project allowance if you complete it, project allowance. If you complete it on time with certain specifications like no bugs or this many bugs and all that. There's a criteria for it, right? Specifications are there. So if you complete the project on time with all those specifications, criteria given, you will get the project allowance, which will be shared among the team members equally. But if you don't, you get zero amount. Agreed?
Yes.
So in variable pay, there are certain variable incentives where, like the classical case of a sales incentive plan and all, they are, what is important here? Predetermined, determined what?
Targets.
Yeah, you are almost clear, but I'm just giving you measurement.
Criteria.
You agree? Predetermined measurement criteria. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, all those metrics. So if you have reached all this within this percentage, so you will get this. So there's a range of what incentives. So 100% you have done, you will get this much. 120% you have done, you will get this much. 130%. So you know beforehand how much you can actually get. Got it, guys? So we'll talk more about it when we are going to do individual equity, or what we call it as variable pay. Then we will be working more on it. But here I want to leave a thought here. Now, when we are devising incentive plans, especially for performance, you need to look at two things. For example, a sales guy who works in a retail store, okay? Who works in a retail store. Now, what will his job be? The corner shop. He will have to just what? Sell some things, usher in some people. So an average performer can do something like 100 units. And a top performer can do something like 120 units. Okay. Who? A sales job in a retail store. But an insurance guy, an average guy will do say 100. Then a top performer will do how much? He can do almost 500. So now I'm putting a question. So I have hired an average guy at what? 10,000 rupees, okay, who can make 100 units. But if I hire another guy at 50,000 rupees, but even if he's a top performer, he can only make 120 units. Is there sense in then hiring a guy for 50,000 rupees?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
But in insurance, an average guy can perform 100 units and a top performer will do 500. So is there a sense in hiring a top performer who can actually stress himself and make 500 units? That means there is scope in this job to do more. So I can have high variable pay, but here there is less scope for making more units. So there is not. So if I say 30% of your salary is variable pay or 40% of your salary is variable pay, it doesn't justify, because the nature of the job is such that there's not much of scope. Like for example, I'm sure all of you know about HR, payroll guy. Some of you are payroll guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the job of a payroll? To ensure that you credit the salary of an employee with the zero error. No?
Yeah.
Without deducting unauthorized some absences, etc., whatever. It has to be accurate. That is what is your major objective, no? Okay. Now, a payroll guy, he works on a software, he gets inputs from the HRBP, HR business partners. He has to just check and do. Okay. Now I will say payroll guy, his variable pay is what? 10% of his salary. Sorry, 10% of his salary. Okay. Now a recruiter. Now an average guy can make what? Maybe 5 mistakes, and a very good guy will make 0 mistakes. But a recruiter, what we can do if he has to complete 20 people, hire 20 people or 30 people in a lead time, okay? An average performer may be finishing only 50% or 60% of the job, but a top performer will be able to creatively, innovatively, at less cost, he will be able to really